Good afternoon, everyone. This is me, Dr. Sam Hamdel Jalil, and this is A230A, and we're second play, which is this is a joint class where we have regular class of Tuesday. This is the regular class, and we're people who are asking whether, because I have seen this on web group. Yeah, this is the class. This is the makeup class. The regular class for Tuesday, the makeup class for obvious reasons. Yesterday. Yes, don't ask me those procedural questions yet. Okay, of course there is a quiz. Of course we send notifications about what the quiz may contain and stuff. If you haven't, you need to check with the BCC, and the BCC is Miss Fatma Abel Has. Okay, so we have a lot of territory to cover, so we don't want to waste any more time. If you guys have any procedural issues, you can always ask. Stop sending stuff, and this is disruptive. If you have questions, keep them until the end or towards the end of the class. So again, this is the Duchess of Malfi. This is our first class on the Duchess of Malfi. We did some kind of introduction last time, but it was very brief, and yeah, and it wouldn't count. So let me share my slides, and we are on our way. I haven't shared yet, so let me share. Okay, so I gather that you guys all can see. I'm sharing my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Give me, yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, good.
Yes.
I remember also that I said I'm not going to kind of give you the plot because I don't want to spoil it for you. Have you done any reading? Do you know what the Duchess of Malfi is about? If you don't, that's fine, but I need you to tell me. So when I say the Duchess of Malfi, does it kind of ring any bells at the back of your minds? Do you know what the plot is or is about? Okay, that's fine. Okay. So I'm saying that, yeah, go ahead, yeah, Tagri.
It's about aristocrats' marriage
Yeah.
between the Duchess of Malfi and I believe it's Antonio.
Mhm.
And
So was it a purely aristocratic marriage where the two people, I mean the bride and the bridegroom, belong to the same rank, the same class, the same
no,
caste? No, right?
yeah, they're
Okay.
from different classes.
Yeah, which is good or bad, ya Tagreed, according to the context, according to the Elizabethan age and the Jacobean age, 16th and
It's
17th century.
yes, it's very bad
Yeah, this is a
for
recipe
this period.
yeah, this is a recipe for disaster, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, ya Tagreed. So it's the Duchess of Malfi, everyone. You need to always remember that this is part of the Jacobean age, which is part of the Renaissance. And by now, when I say the Renaissance, what kind of ideas and ideologies the word evokes, right? So we're continuing with this. The idea, perhaps, what is uh, paramount and outstanding about this party is that we have um, um, a woman's voice, and it's very assertive, unlike the other voices that we have been hearing from women, especially on Othello. So perhaps that would hint at something that the age has or times have changed, and we are into perhaps a relationship of equality, a relationship of equity where women are given the rights. We're going to see whether women are given the rights or not, and whether those rights are given easily, or is it the woman who has to earn those rights? She perhaps has to fight for them. We're going to see all of that. So again, it's the Duchess of Malfi. And this is, of course, we're using a textbook that discusses the Duchess of Malfi, and it discusses it in two different chapters. We have chapter 3, which is love and marriage in the Malfi royal court, and then we move to chapter 4, and we'll talk about it when the time is right. Okay, so we're talking about a play written by John Webster, and John Webster is a Jacobean playwright, and he was a contemporary to Shakespeare, except for the fact that he was like 10 or 15 years junior. Um, as you're going to notice, the two ages are not very different, whether we're talking about the Elizabethan age where Shakespeare belongs, or the Jacobean age where John Webster belongs. So it's the same climate of ideas. It's again the idea of established order, the idea of hierarchies, but perhaps with Shakespeare and with Othello we have a hierarchy of color and a hierarchy of race. But this time around in John Webster's the Duchess of Malfi, the hierarchy is a hierarchy of rank, where you have people on top, and then you move on until you have people at the bottom. And obviously, the people of the bottom shouldn't reach out to the people on top, and the people on top shouldn't go down. And what happens if this is not happening? If the people on top are reaching out to people at the bottom, reaching out here means that perhaps they fall in love with them, they try to get married to them. This is obviously not acceptable, and this is not going to be without consequences. Again, the framework that we're using, the dramatic framework that we're using, is the tragedy. Why the tragedy? Because it has provisions and it caters. It is very appropriate to what normally happens on those, you know, plays where you have high stake issues of you know, established order and the transgression against this established order. Now, obviously, the consequences are dire. You have blood being shed. In this case, um, you would want to have a dramatic framework that caters for that, and the one very appropriate in our case would be the tragedy. But we're going to tweak it a little bit. We're not going to say that it is purely tragedy in the Shakespearean or the Greek sense. It is a revenge tragedy. A revenge tragedy is a tragedy like any other tragedy, except for the fact that it has a great deal of bloodshed, except for the fact that people are bent on taking revenge from each other. So when I say it's a revenge tragedy, we expect a lot of bloodshed and a lot of revenge taking place. So it's in John Webster's The Tragedy of the Duchess of Malfi. So the title spells it out for us. It's a tragedy, and it's the tragedy of the Duchess of Malfi. Okay. So tragedy we know. Okay. But perhaps we don't know who the Duchess is and where Malfi is. So two things we need to think of. We need to think of the phrase the Duchess, or the word Duchess, and also Malfi. So the Duchess is obviously the name of the protagonist, the main character. The main character is not given a name, and Duchess means a queen. Okay, and when we talk about Italy, they don't have this system of kingship. They don't have kingdoms. What they have is, or are, dukedoms. And the one who rules a dukedom is called a duke, a male. The male would be a duke, and the female would be duchess. So the duchess here is the queen. And the place that we're talking about is Malfi. Malfi is a nation state, or is a city state in Italy. Italy was not united until later, perhaps in the late 19th century and early 20th century. Before that, it was divided into um, dukedoms and small city states. And one of them was Venice, if you still remember, when we did Othello. So the Amalfi is another um, city state or dukedom. And who is on top? On top is a duchess. She doesn't have a name, and this may be significant, and this may be something that we'll talk about and elaborate on later in the play. So the Malfi court, we're talking about this city state that is called Malfi, and it has on top a duchess. Okay, so let's see what the whole play is about. The chapter is that we're discussing the Duchess of Malfi through is called Love and Marriage in the Malfi Royal Court. So it's love and marriage. Where in the Malfi, where specifically are we talking about Malfi as a city state? We're talking about Malfi, the Malfi Royal Court. Of course, you know what a royal court is, where, I mean, kings and queens and duchesses and princes live. So it's exclusive, obviously, it is exclusive to the royal court of Malfi. Okay, who do we have there? We have the Duchess, of course, and we have her two brothers. And of course, you will have sisters and uncles and also assistants and courtiers. Okay, so the focus in this chapter is on love and marriage, and whether love and marriage are going to run in their natural trajectory and course, where we would have people belonging to the same class getting married and living happily ever after. We wouldn't have a tragedy if things go this that normal, and obviously we have a problem. We're going to see what kind of love this love is and what kind of marriage it is. Let's move on. So this is about John Webster, the dramatist, and the fact that he was a contemporary to Shakespeare. It's only that he was 16 years younger. If we're going to strike and set parallels and correspondence between Othello and the Duchess of Malfi, we'll find that the two of them are tragedies, and both of them are about forbidden love, more specifically about forbidden marriage. And obviously, there is nothing wrong with two people getting married to each other, but according to the age and the times, they have to be equal. Equal in terms of race and color, as we have seen or as we haven't seen in Othello, and equal in rank or the lack thereof, as we have seen, as we're going to see in the Duchess of Malfi. So it's about forbidden love, and we'll see why this kind of love is frowned upon and is seen as forbidden. And ultimately, if it's forbidden love, it is also forbidden marriage. And because it's forbidden, and obviously forbidden for good reasons, according to the time, death and violence will ensue and will result. So while Shakespeare's focus in his tragedy of love is race, Webster's focus is obviously on class or rank. So It's very also interesting that the Duchess of Malfi has a heroine, not a hero. So in this tragedy, we're not talking about a tragic hero. We're talking about a tragic heroine. And is it something that we're used to or familiar with? Absolutely not. This is quite unheard of to have the main character in a tragedy as a heroine. This is obviously very new and quite unusual in Renaissance tragedy. Um, who else do we have? If we try to set parallels between Othello and the Duchess of Malfi, we also have a villain, um, enigmatic and sinister, and that would also remind us of Iago. The villain that we have is Ferdinand, the brother of the Duchess. We also have Bosola, who is also a villain, but perhaps a more philosophical one. Um, so obviously, the play is about this idea of love and marriage, the marriage of the heroine, which goes against the wishes of her aristocratic family. Obviously, um, she gets married against their will and against their wish because she got married to the wrong guy according to them in terms of rank. Um, what is also interesting about the play is that the tables are turned. There is reversals of roles. You would expect the man to be courting the lady, saying I love, ask her hand in marriage, but this is obviously not happening here. We have the Duchess deciding to call the shots and to go and court Antonio and ask him to get married to her. Typical of tragedies, we don't see much of the Duchess until later in the play. Um, Again, this is meant to create excitement and suspense, and also it gives us, perhaps some time to get to know about the Duchess more through the revelations of the other characters. She doesn't appear until we are, in line 36-5. Um, Again, obviously, it's not the Duchess that we only have. We also have Antonio, who happens to be a steward or a courtier or an assistant in the Malfi royal court. um, Again, it's all about preparing the stage for the bombshell, and the bombshell is obviously the Duchess of Malfi asking Antonio, who happens to be beneath her rank, to get married to her. In Act One, or actually what we see in Act One, is that we have an encounter or some kind of conversation between Antonio and a friend of his who also happens to be a courtier, somebody who works in the Malfi royal court, and his name is Delio. And through the revelations, we get to know that Antonio was on a state visit to the royal court of France. So we get to know that Antonio is a courtier, is an assistant in the royal court, and also Delio works with him. So he is back from this official visit to the French court, and he starts to talk about the two royal courts, the royal court of Malfi and the royal court of France. And we'll see how much the conversation or how far it will go in terms of what he thinks of this French royal court as opposed to the royal court of Malta. So what do we understand from the conversation? We understand that Antonio admires the French court, and he has his reasons. He says that those guys don't have corruption. The king always surrounds himself with only good advisors. The the king thinks of his mission as a king as some kind of mission given to him by God. And that's why he keeps doing stuff in the right way, because he thinks that God entrusts him with the rule, and he shouldn't obviously let God down or disobey God. So he is a God-fearing king. Obviously, whatever uh, um, Antonio says about the French royal court is some kind of hint at what is happening in the Malfi court. That the Malfi court is totally different. So if he admires the French court, it means that he believes that the Malfi court needs reform. If he thinks that the king is good in the French court, it means that we have issues and problems in the way the Duchess and her brothers are ruling or governing the Malfi kingdom or duke. Um, Again, and we have this very interesting comparison uh, um, between, or analogy rather, that Antonio is giving us when he says that any royal court is like a common fountain. You need to always remember that in the past they didn't used to have running water. They didn't have water taps. It's not like us now. You go in any flat or any house where you have water taps and you have water running. No. In the past, there was this common fountain where in the middle of a place, people go to this common fountain in order to take water. They use it for washing, they use it for cooking and everything. So if you have a common fountain, you try to make sure that the water is clean, that the water is pure, and the water is not poisoned in any way. Antonio is comparing the royal court, or any royal court for that matter, to a common fountain. So if the royal court is clean, clean means it's not corrupt, and you have good people, you have good counselors and advisors, that would affect the entire nation in a positive way, like the purity of the common fountain. The opposite um, is not what he recommends. The idea that if the common fountain is poisonous, if it's it's not very pure, that would affect the entire population, exactly like having a royal court that is corrupt and that has bad counselors and advisors. Um, so again, we're talking about the royal courts and its influence over the entire nation. Um, Again, you would also need to think of Antonio, who is giving us those vivid images. Antonio here is very um, powerful with the language that he is using, the analogies that he is making, which can only tell us that we are in front of a good, smart individual. Um, Again, we're talking about this idea of common fountain, this very vivid image or analogy. So the common fountain from which everyone drinks should be pure, but if it is poisoned, it spreads its contagion throughout the land. And of course, we made those parallels between royal courts and common fountains. Um, and there is always in Antonio's talk, there is always this idea of religion, the idea that governments that are good and are well ruled are blessed governments, and the work of the monarch or the king in this case would be the work of heaven. Okay, so you would hear words like blessed government, the work of heaven, and stuff like that. So the fact that Antonio speaks about a royal court in religious terms reminds that in early modern England, doctrines like the divine right of kings used to. I mean, there was this doctrine, the divine right of kings, that kings, when they rule, they believe that they are God's representative on earth, and that they are invested with religious significance, and it's they are divinely ordained. So this was the conversation between Delio and Antonio, and if anything, it gives us, some idea about Antonio. What what do we know about Antonio from this very long conversation? We know that he is very smart. We know that he is wise. We know that he is um, very diplomatic, and he as a diplomat, he knows how to draw parallels between courts, and he drives his ideas home by making those very vivid comparisons and analogies, and one of them was this common fountain analogy. And then after a while, Bosola, another character, will um, go into the stage, and he's going to we have the character of the cardinal, and the cardinal, for those who don't know, is the brother of the duchess. So the cardinal goes inside the stage, and then Bosola, one of his assistants perhaps, or so far, follows. And we have this kind of conversation uh, uh, between the Antonio and Delio, and Antonio is going to give us his opinion about Bosola. So a few lines later, Delio informs Antonio, "I know this fellow 7 years in the galleys for a notorious murder, and was thought the cardinal subordinate." When you hear this, this is obviously a comment by Delio when he saw Bosola. He said that, "I know this guy. He spent 7 years in prison because he killed somebody." And everybody is saying that the cardinal is behind. And the cardinal hired him to kill someone. When you get to know that the cardinal is an elite, is the brother of the duchess, and he is also ruling, so you would have this idea that the royal court of Malfi is corrupt. If the cardinal, who happens to be one of the rulers, is hiring people to kill other people, obviously we have a problem. Um, so again, you would um, right away think of the French royal court, where the king is only surrounded by candid counselors and good advisors. Here in the Malfi court, the rulers are surrounding themselves with killers like Bosola. You need to also remember that the cardinal is not a name; it's a title, it's a job title, and cardinal is a clergy or a member of the clergy. Clergy is somebody whose job is religion, preaches, works in a church. So the cardinal, obviously, together with being the Duchess's brother, is also a man of God. So again, that's very weird and very strange because we have just heard that he hired somebody to kill somebody else. So obviously, whether he is royalty, he is violating the codes of conduct for royalty, and he, as a man of God, he is also violating the codes of conduct of people of religion. Um, so again, we're talking here about the courtly decadence and corruption. And again, this is obviously a reference to what used to happen in the court of King James the First. So um, again, and this is something that I said the other day, that it is true that the writer is English or British. The play is set in Italy. But of course, it has reference to what used to happen in the royal court of the English king, King James the First. It was also corrupt, and that when there was a lot of corruption, he was surrounding himself with bad counselors and advisors, and he used to do a lot of bad things. Um, so James' court was infamous for its profligacy. Profligacy means that he used to overspend. He used to spend lavishly on petty stuff. He showered his favorites with money, offices, and privileges. So he was very extravagant, and that contributed towards a constant need for money. Um, um, Again, as you can see, there is a great deal of similarity between the corruption in the Malfi royal court and the corruption in the royal court of King James the First. Again, um, if we talk about corruption and if we talk about kings who are besetting and surrounding themselves with bad people and bad and evil counselors and advisors, this is normally the background of revenge tragedies. So one of the characteristics of the revenge tragedy is to have as background decadent and corrupt royal court. So this is not the only characteristic of a revenge tragedy. We also have the the character of the malcontent. The malcontent is one of the features or features very highly and very predominantly in revenge tragedies. Who is the malcontent here? It's Bosola. Um, so again, revenge tragedies to which the Duchess of Malfi belongs, presents the audience with the spectacle of decadent courts and irresponsible and often criminal rulers. Um, Again, obviously, this is not the only thing. We also have the feature or the characteristic, another feature, which is the malcontent. And the malcontent is a character who is consumed with disgust at the corruption and stupidity of courtly society, and who vents his spleen by railing against it. And in our play, this role is played by Bosola. So this is the character of the malcontent, which is a very important feature of the revenge tragedy. So one feature would be the fact that the background of revenge tragedies is that of decadent royal courts and irresponsible and often criminal rulers. This is one, and then the character of the malcontent, who is a character who lashes out at the corruption that is happening in society and especially in courtly society. So we have Bosola, the malcontent. Um, in or behind their back, Bosola would attack the cardinal and he would also attack Ferdinand. And Ferdinand happens to be the second brother of the Duchess. He attacks them for presiding over a courtly environment where loyal service no reward, where only flattering panders prosper. His language is extraordinarily colorful and energetic. So Bosola, um, in his capacity as the malcontent of this revenge tragedy, attacks the cardinal and Ferdinand because he believes that they only surround themselves with flattering advisors, and the fact that when they give rewards, it's not based on merit, it is rather based on flattery. Whoever flatters them, they give them positions and they give them money and everything. But if you're good and if you're hardworking, you don't get that. It's very ironic because we're going to see that Bosola does not live up to what he says because he himself is corrupt, as we're going to see. So Bosola identifies the brothers of the Duchess, I mean the Cardinal and Ferdinand, as scavengers and ensigns. Um, and and the things that they do, and obviously they are corrupt. Um, and then we have this kind of comparison between Antonio and Bosola. We have seen Antonio before, and if you still remember, he was presented in the nicest of ways. He was presented as smart, as a good diplomat, as somebody who vividly portrays and makes those comparisons between court, royal courts, and giving us insights into which of them is good and which of them is corrupt and bad. So if we compare Antonio to Bosola, we'll see that both of them are low-born, and obviously they depend entirely on for their material success on the patronage of their social betters. But obviously they are different. Bosola is witty and is satirical, and obviously his satire and his wit and attack is leveled against the patronage system that rewards toadying rather than merit. Uh, so the play makes clear the invidious position Bosola is leveled at. Um, we also have this opportunity where Antonio is going to give us his opinion of Bosola. At one point, he will say, "Yet I observe his railing is not simple love or piety. Indeed, he rails at those things which he wants, would be as lecherous, covetous, or proud, bloody, or envious as any man, if he had means to be so." He is trying to say that Busola is not what he claims to be. He claims to be pious, to be God-fearing, to be thinking of the interest of the country, but in actual fact, He is as corrupt, he is as covetous, he is as lecherous, but it's only that he is waiting the chance to kind of show that. So it is true that he is railing against the corrupt court. It is true that he is verbally attacking Ferdinand and the cardinal in their absence, but in actual fact, he is not genuine in this kind of attack because he himself would do their bidding. Whatever they ask him to do, if even if it's evil, he does it very willingly because he uh, he hopes that they can elevate him and they can promote him. So he is not what he claims uh, um, he is. So again, that if anything, that would give you insights into the character of Bosola, and those insights are given by Antonio, and that would tell you that Antonio is a good judge of characters because this will be proven later. We're going to discover that Bosola is what Antonio is saying he is. He is evil, he is corrupt, and his attack or verbal attack and his criticism of the Malfi royal court is lip service and is not genuine. What is perhaps to Busola's credit would be the fact that he is a little bit philosophical. Sometimes he undergoes bouts of real and genuine regret, but that wouldn't prevent him from doing harm to others. So Bosola is torn between an acute awareness of the social and moral deficiencies of the patronage system and a longing for social advancement that binds him to it. So it is he has this conflict within his soul and mind. He believes that there is corruption, that there is deficiencies and loopholes in the patronage system, but at the same time, he wants social advancement. He is ready to be part of this corrupt patronage system to become better and to advance. So Busola may despise the yes men who thrive in the courtly milieu, but at the same time, he wants to share in the material prosperity they enjoy. So as you can see, you can always compare Busola to Iago. Both of them are disgruntled servants, but obviously Webster's version is obviously um, a more advanced one, where obviously Musola has this moral awareness that is absent from Shakespeare's Iago. He is resentful, it is true, but he is not philosophical. He is a self, I mean, Iago is a self-confessed rogue, and he doesn't have those pangs of conscience. He doesn't have those conflicts within his soul and mind, as we see in the character of Bosola. Um, so we have heard and we're hearing throughout the play that there is this prospect and there is this possibility that the Duchess remarry. So we didn't say that the Duchess uh, is a widow. A widow means that her husband died and she decides to get married again. So obviously there is nothing wrong with getting married again, provided that you choose the right husband according to the right spouse according to the Jacobean age. So according to the Jacobean age, in order for people to get married, they have to have the consent of their families. They have to also be equal in rank. So again, if we see that the Cardinal and Ferdinand are so hostile to the prospect that their sisters may marry again, we need to stop and ask. They have their personal reasons and they also have their family reasons. So both brothers seem to be worried that their widowed sister will succumb to temptation and undertake a marriage that damages the family honor. So they are hiding and disguising behind this idea of family honor. They also, or they are also afraid that because she is a widow, she is more likely to want to marry a second time. So they they don't want her to marry a second time, and they don't want her to marry beneath her rank either. So why wouldn't they want her to marry again? They have their personal reasons because they are part of the ruling elite. They rule, or she perhaps assigns them some uh, rules. She says, do this, do that. They are part of the ruling elite, and if somebody comes in, if she marries again, perhaps her husband will take over and they will not have the privileges that they are now having as as members of the ruling elite. This is one thing. Again, the other thing is that the fear that because she is independent, because she is the queen, she may choose whoever she wants to marry, and that would mean that she may marry somebody beneath her rank, and in this case, this is disgracing the whole family, uh, uh, according to them. Um, so this idea that a woman cannot marry without the blessing and the consent of her family, and we have seen that in Othello when Desdemona got married without the blessing and the consent of her father, and we saw what happened to her. This is a continuation of the same idea, where we also have early modern ideas about women and family honor. So the attitude that the two brothers are taking is a typical attitude at the time, the idea or a typical early modern attitude against women and family honor. So their fears and the fears of the two brothers are in large part fueled by anxieties about female sexuality in general and of widows in particular. Um, that's why, I mean, whenever there is this encounters between the cardinal and his sister, he keeps reminding her that she is a widow, and widow's vows or promises never to remarry um, do not last no longer than the turning of an hourglass. She says that they can promise you all they like, that they will not marry again, but then at the next hour they are already married. Again, the fear would be that if a woman marries, she moves from a position of legal subservience to her father to being legally subject to her husband. So the fear is that she is also a widow, and as a widow, they cannot control her. She can remarry without their consent, and and in this case, if she has wealth, the wealth can be easily transferred to her husband. So then all those ideas clearly worries the cardinal, who warns his sister not to take your own choice. So obviously, they are trying to kind of warn her against getting married again for all those reasons. Again, we need to also remember that she is the queen of the land. She's the female ruler, and she can act independently of their wishes. Um, Again, that exasperates the whole situation, and perhaps add would add to their concerns. Um, Again, they would guard, or they always give this excuse that they are very uh, um, concerned about this idea of family honor. Uh, no, but obviously, there is nothing wrong with a second marriage. What is wrong against wrong about the second marriage would be that she may marry beneath her uh, somebody from not from within her rank, somebody who is beneath her in rank. And this is another interesting encounter between Ferdinand and his sister, in which he again reflects the misogynist attitudes towards women, and also those stereotypical views of women and how they can be easily tempted by the sweet talk of men. So you need to remember that he is talking to a queen, which means that she doesn't lack wisdom. She is, but he is looking at her as a woman in the early modern context, where women are taken for granted, are thought very little of. Uh, so Fernand is saying, you are a widow. You know already what man is, and therefore let not youth, high promotion, eloquence, uh, uh, no, nor anything without addition, honor, sway your high blood. So he's telling her, again, it's this typical patronizing attitude where Ferdinand and the cardinal are dealing with their sister as a kid or as a small girl who needs advice and guidance. This is very patronizing, as if she is a small. Again, they are acting according to the age and the ideas of the age about women. Again, well, there is, of course, he talks about high blood, they being high blood. High blood means royal blood, royal, yeah, pure and everything. And again, that would reflect in their insecurity, their class insecurity, and the fear that she may fall into the arms of a lower class individual. And this is actually what is going to happen, as we're going to see. She is going to get married to a guy who is of humble birth. And in certain situations, the cardinal is going to cry out loud and try to remind her of their high blood. Shall our blood, the royal blood of Aragon and Castile, be thus attained? So that would confirm his belief that a cross-class marriage constitutes a tainting or corruption of the family's pure noble blood. He is trying to remind everybody that cross-class marriages are not the right thing to do. A marriage in which there is somebody who has a high rank and somebody who is lowborn shouldn't exist and shouldn't be allowed. So again, if anything, those concerns about the two brothers are telling us something about the age. It tells us that perhaps during the Elizabethan age, people started to think of this idea of mixing and getting married to the people that they love rather than the people that are prescribed and recommended to them. This is perhaps part of the age, as the spirit of the age, in which there is some uh, um, liberalism, and there is this possibility that you can, move up in the social ladder. There is social mobility. Um, so people who are so used to the idea of class fixity, of rigidity, and this idea that you have to stick to traditions, are of course very fearful of the prospect that at one point there will be no classes and people can get married to whoever they want, and the focus would be on merit. Merit means that you can climb up the social ladder not because your father is such and such or your family is royal or anything. It's simply because through your hard work. Your hard work can get you as high as is possible. So again, that may be a reference to the age in which we're seeing signs that society is changing and is allowing people who are lowborn to go up as long as they have what it takes in terms of uh, achievements and merit. So we're talking about this erosion of social hierarchy. Um, Again, there is also this talk about noble blood as being a myth that needs to be debunked. So as you can see, the play's dominant aristocratic order is in a state of crisis, threatened by men like Antonio, who is presented as an able administrator who, as we will soon know, captures the heart of a high-born woman more impressed by merit than rank. So it's not only that they oppose this kind of marriage because of their ideas about women. No, the two brothers also have this concern about class boundaries and the nature of marriage itself. They also express this belief that a marriage is a union between a man and a woman, which should be chosen not by the individual but by the family, and not for reasons of love, but with a view to enhancing family power and maintaining elite exclusivity. So they are after that too. So they have so many reasons to say no to this kind of marriage and to oppose it by all means. Um, Again, there is this idea that marriage um, during the time was something. I mean, this element of love did not exist. Again, that would go against an emerging trend at the time in which marriage would be built on this idea of people getting married because they are in agreement with each other, because they love each other. The idea also of compatibility in mind and everything. So while the aristocracy slung to its desire for dynastic unions, other sections of early modern English society adhere to an idea of marriage as a partnership based on reciprocated affection, love, in other words. Again, we get to know. that what the brothers feared happened. Their sister is planning a second marriage to a commoner. Of course, it's very clear to you that Antonio is presented is the best of terms. He is given a big and a huge scope at the beginning of the play so that we can have insights into his characters. And obviously, he is acting very well. He is behaving very well so that when the bombshell is dropped and we get to know that of all the people in this dukedom or in this kingdom, the Duchess chose him for a husband, he would deserve it. We're being prepared for this moment by having a great deal of talk about Antonio, a great deal of action about Antonio, and all the action and the decisions that he takes are very wise, are very smart. So Antonio is depicted in terms of his well-developed and credible political ideas. Uh, and Antonio is also giving us his opinion about other characters like Bosola, and his ideas happen to be correct. He is going to also give us what he thinks of the Cardinal and Ferdinand, and finally the Duchess. And we're going to see that over time, what he says is true, what he says is a very correct and true assessment of these characters. Again, that would contribute to the idea that he deserves to be chosen by the Duchess. So it's merit, not inheritance this time around. So the fact that it is Antonio who is selected to provide the audience with this information endows his character with a considerable amount of authority. So Antonio, as you can see, is treated with considerable respect. Um, he is not only allowed to enlighten the spectators as to the natures of the play's main characters, his merit is emphasized when he is announced as the winner of a joust. So again, he is invested with much authority, and he is presented as a direct challenge to the elitism and caste pride represented by the Duchess brothers. So Antonio's description of the Cardinal and Ferdinand served to enhance our understanding of the kind of social and political rottenness the brothers embody. What he stresses is the gap between their inner and outer selves. So how does he see the Cardinal? According to Antonio, while the Cardinal may play the role of a brave fellow when in company, underneath, he is a melancholy churchman given to inveterate plotting against his enemies and not averse to bribing his way to the top of his profession. This is what, as you can see, um, Antonio is giving us a profile of those different characters. Again, he gives us true assessments of their characters, which happen to be true, and also he reveals how good he is when it comes to judging people and their behavior and everything. So, what does he say about the cardinal? He says that he may impress you as a brave fellow when he is among people, but deep down, and when he is alone, he's a melancholy churchman. He is a sad individual, and he is ready to plot against his enemies, and he is ready to bribe his way to the top of his profession. And then he moves on, I mean, Antonio, and talks about Ferdinand. And he says that Ferdinand may impress you as a Renaissance prince, somebody who is wise and everything, but deep down he is a most perverse and turbulent nature, and he has a most perverse and turbulent nature, which is true. And he also refers to the fact that Ferdinand, part of his responsibilities and duties was to work as a judge. And he pretends to sleep off the bench only to entrap offenders in their answers. He says that he is exercising and is practicing gimmicks, which are out of keeping with him being a wise judge, which tells us a great deal about his character. Um, Antonio believes that the two brothers are actors who use performance to control and dominate others, which is true. And then we move on to Antonio giving us what he thinks of the Duchess. And what he says is, again, it tells us a great deal about the Duchess and also about him. So he describes her as a paragon of womanhood, that she is a full and a complete woman. And he distinguishes her from her brothers. He says, no, far from it, she is not corrupt. She is not like her brothers. He says that her speech is enchanting without being in any way sinister, and her appearance is so lovely that it could cure paralysis. Obviously, this is a hyperbole, and this is an exaggeration. He says that the Duchess' beauty can cure paralysis. Of course, you know what paralysis is, challenge. So if people look at her, they can heal from paralysis. This is, of course, an exaggeration. He also believes that she has chastity, she's clean and pure, um, and she has this divine countenance and divine appearance. He believes that the Duchess should be a model for other women to emulate and copy. Again, we're stressing the fact that he is very hyperbolic and very exaggerated in what he says about um, the lady, which what used to happen during the time. This is part of the tradition of love poetry, and it was very common at the time. So again, his description and praise of the Duchess is very excessive. However, this makes it clear that by the time the Duchess begins her courtship of Antonio, we know that he is in love with her, and it is what he says is obviously an indication that he was in love with her, but he wouldn't say it, of course, because he knows that she is very high and he's very low. Again, we would have people talk about this kind of marriage between Antonio and the Duchess, and how this kind of marriage, or how she was described, or her marriage actually, as willful, wanton, and irresponsible. So this is, of course, what people at the time used to think of this kind of man. When you come to think about it, you may think, yes, what she did was violating norms of femininity, especially when she goes and asks Antonio to get married to her. Obviously, you don't expect a female to go to a male and ask him to marry her. You normally expect the male to go and take the first step. So again, in this sense, she is violating norms of femininity. She is adopting a more active role in the marriage than Antonio himself. She's courting, effectively proposing marriage to him. She is this even bolder. She in this she is even bolder than Desdemona. who only hints to Othello that she would welcome his courtship. Again, there is always this reference to how the Duchess is seen by her brothers, which is again typical of the age. At one point, she would um, kind of go out of her way and ask Ferdinand, "Why should only I, of all other princes of the world, be cased up like a holy relic? I have youth and a little beauty." She's questioning the reasons as why she wouldn't marry and why she wouldn't choose. She says, "I have youth and a little beauty, and obviously there is nothing wrong with me getting married again." Um, she's saying that I'm I'm a flesh and blood individual, and I have every right to get married again. So she's defending her humanity. She's defending the fact that she's not a holy relic. She's not a piece of rock or monument that can be put uh, in a cupboard or in a closet and be kept there forever. No, she says that I'm a human being. I have flesh and bone and blood, and I feel like everybody else. And then because she was very assertive about what she does, and she fears nobody. She at one point she would go and tell Antonio, go brag. You have left me heartless. Mine is in your bosom," and revealing that it is rooted in her perception and appreciation of Antonio's work. So he eventually won her heart and mind, and again she doesn't hide that, and this is quite daring and quite unprecedented. So both characters, Antonio and the Duchess, kneel and speak lines that evoke strongly companionate ideas of marriage. So again, we're talking about love and marriage. We're talking about Act One. We're talking about the character of the Duchess, and how daring she is. And she is obviously telling him, "You don't have to worry. I mean, marriage is about two people. They don't need. I mean, the only thing that they need would be their mutual consent." Uh, and again, she was very daring. She knows her rights, and she worked or fought for them for those rights. So we now are man and wife, and it's the church that must but echo this. She says, and this is obviously defying the expectations and the conventions. She says that we are man and wife, and this is what counts eventually. It's not the church. The church may come later and confirm this kind of marriage, but it's me and you. If we agree, if there is this mutual consent, everything else is second. So she's obviously giving priority to an idea of marriage as a private contract outside the direct control of the ecclesiastical authorities or the church. It's an idea with which many of the play's original spectators would no doubt um, have sympathized with. So as you can see, we have this turning of conventional gender roles. You have this reversal of roles where you would expect the lady to be courted, to be spoken to, and ask for marriage, and you would expect the man to be assertive, to taking matters into his own hand, but this is obviously not happening here. So the staging of the courtship stresses how much this marriage turns conventional gender roles on their heads. So not only does the Duchess instigate the wooing, it is she who places the ring on Antonio's finger. And when he kneels in response, she raises him up again. So again, she manipulates and manages the whole situation. She's the one who puts the ring in his finger, and this is something that we expect the man to be doing. So again, it's a reversal of rules, and again, and it's also a confirmation and assertion of her position of power as the queen or the duchess of the land. um, Again, as you can see, Antonio is silent in these situations. He is not an agent, and he doesn't have any agency. He is, perhaps in linguistic terms, we call him the patient. The patient means that he only receives. He is a recipient of initiatives and actions. As you can see, in a total reversal of roles, the Duchess, the female, the woman, is doing everything, and he is only receiving. Even the wedding ring he wouldn't give to her. She is the one who gave to him, and she is the one who is putting on his finger. You may want to perhaps think and consider the fact that um, Antonio is also very scared of the backlash of the two brothers. Perhaps this is spoiling the joy that he feels. Uh, he knows that this is not going to go that easy. There has to be consequences because he knows that he is very low and she is very high. So he is also frightened of the Duchess brothers, and Webster encourages us to share his fear. And of course, I mean, Ferdinand has always warned um, um, and sent veiled threats to his sister that if this happens, he will not spare nothing. Such weddings may more properly be said to be executed than celebrated. And the marriage night is entrance into some prison. And these are all, kind of warnings, whether made, whether they are made by Ferdinand or the cardinal, and obviously Antonio was aware of them. And then another gender confusing encounters are when the Duchess speaks about how she can defend this marriage, how far she can go defending this kind of marriage. So again, we have this gender confusion kind of thing. We don't know, or we're confused. You expect Antonio to be more assertive as a man, but he's not, and you would expect the Duchess to be perhaps weak, to be, um, you know, to be a typical woman in this typical age, only receiving, but obviously she is totally different. Um, at one point, she is uh, alone on the stage, and she dismisses her brothers, and she would say with contempt, If all my royal kindred lay in my way unto this marriage, I would make them my lawful steps. She is very adamant about getting married to the one she chose, and she's saying that if all of them stand in my way towards this kind of marriage, they are going to be to lay as steps towards this marriage, going to go over their bodies and still marry the one I chose. Again, this is very daring, this is very assertive, and you wouldn't expect it from a woman at the time. Again, she would also talk about the idea that she would go to any length and to any battles. She would fight any battles to achieve or to kind of do what she wants. So she says that she is in for battles, of course, but she is determined to using those battles to her advantage, just as men in battles sometimes do, facing danger and thereby transforming their fear into courage and valor. Again, when we talk about battles and wars, obviously this is the masculine world of the military. This is the masculine world of military heroism that was exclusive to males and men. But obviously, she is assuming those heroic roles, and obviously, it's not Antonio. And this is again an example of gender confusion. So you would say that she's a woman. She shouldn't have done that, but her high rank connects her to it. Remember, she is also the queen of the land. Again, she's stressing the fact that she is up to it and she's ready to do anything. She says, do not think of them. Don't think of those of my brother. Don't care about them. All discord without this circumference is only to be pitied and not feared. You shouldn't fear them. You should pity them. So you would expect the man to be reassuring the woman. This is a typical image, but not anymore. Again, to add to the gender confusion that we have been enmeshed with for so long, I mean, the Duchess is the one who seeks to reassure her husband, who constantly feels helpless and overwhelmed by the course of events. Even Antonio realizes that she is having the upper hand, which is a reversal of roles, and he recognizes this gender confusion when he himself tells her, these words should be mine. I should be the one who defends you. I should be the one who says these things. And then we have other situations where you also have other female characters. And we are also given what they think of this kind of marriage. Uh, um, um, Again, typically, Coriola, the Duchess maid, is very fearful of the prospect, and she doesn't know whether this is uh, some kind of irresponsible act on the part of the Duchess, or is it genuine love and everything. So this is what Criolla is saying. Whether the spirit of greatness or of woman reign most in her, I know not, but it shows a fearful madness. I owe her much of pity. She is kind of anticipating what may happen. Criolla, Criolla, her maidservant, is saying, um, I don't know whether she's doing this out of her greatness as a woman in authority. I don't really know. Perhaps this is madness, and I think I should pity her because she is not in the best of positions. So Criolla here is uncertain whether to see the Duchess' bid for self-determination as evidence of her greatness of spirit or her feminine willfulness. One of the critics by the name of Wigham is referring to what the Duchess is doing and what she is engaged in as some kind of cultural voyaging. And he is referring to her as a cultural voyager, somebody who navigates uh, um, the culture and is obviously challenging this kind of culture. So, a cultural voyager who arrogates to herself a new role, that of female hero. So, the Duchess, as you can see, is moving knowingly into uncharted waters beyond the bounds of socially accepted behavior where there will be no clear path to guide her. She is starting something new, getting married to somebody who is beneath her rank, courting him, reassuring him whenever he is fearful. She does everything you would expect of a man, and he does everything you would expect of a woman. So obviously, she's doing something else in the absence of models. We haven't seen, females before her who is doing what she is doing. And this is obviously the conclusion of Act 1, where, as you can see, we have a whole dramatic world dominated by a morally impoverished aristocratic elite who are obsessed with controlling their sisters' sexuality and policing the class boundary that sets them apart from those lower down the social scale. It's against this background that we are presented with a poisonous courtly milieu. We're also introduced to this marriage between the Duchess and Antonio, with all its positive meanings. And again, there, through Act 1, we have talks about marriage in terms of how traditional it is and how compatible. And then you have this diversion and transgression against those rules and guidelines by the Duchess herself. I guess we're going to stop on this note because I've been talking for so long. And next time we can have the rest of the play. If you have any questions. Okay, type on this note and with this item, we'll come to the end of today's class and I'll see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Doc.
Work. Bye bye.